Welcome back. You hear Goldberg. Today I'll be talking about this excellent Hinge soy Reddit post that is quite illustrative of where we are in the present day. Engaged my Hinge match. I-24F joined Hinge in March and had a ton of likes the day I joined. My fiance, 30M, was one of them. I went on a date with him a few days later on the weekend, and it wasn't love at first sight. Things were fine, but the initial spark wasn't there. I continued talking to other guys on the app. We went on another date the next weekend, and I knew I liked him at that point. We went exclusive a couple weeks later. She had to get a couple of pump and dumps in with Chad first. He proposed and we'll get married. He had been on Hinge and other apps on and off for a long time, like 10-ish years, and he had been on about 400 first dates. I'm so excited for our future. I wouldn't have thought I could be this happy with someone. It's just so easy being with him. Pay attention here. She's been on Hinge since March, so roughly by the time this is posted, we're talking about 10 months. She found a guy within a month that she could marry. He had been on dating apps for 10 years, on and off, 400 first dates, probably also met some people in real life. This is truly astonishing. There are the feminists saying, oh, the age gap is disturbing. Yeah, God forbid. He should be marrying some 35-year-old. I went on Hinge recently and I put the age range a little bit higher than my age because I was like, okay, maybe they'll be more serious. They actually want to hang out. And it seems that over the age of 30, 90+% of the women are 200 plus. And I'm not talking about, oh, she's like, 6'5". No, she's like 5'2", 5'3", and over 200 pounds. And they've got the short blue hair, they've got triple chins, and they're talking about life partner, monogamy, entitlement. It's just like, what the? You should be ashamed of yourself. And yet they're not, for some reason, to display all their wonderful rolls, Hawaiian extract. It's truly horrendous. Anyway, let's go down here. Well, it's not a joke when people say you got to treat it like a second full-time job. I spend a lot of time swiping, optimizing my profile, putting my best foot forward, lubing up. I learned pretty quickly it's a numbers game. And only 10% of your matches actually result in dates, so I started focusing on getting a consistent number of matches to meet the threshold of how many dates per week I'd go on. Holy hell in a handbasket, this sounds like a psychopath. A profile that truly matches your personality. F rules and regulations. Just be yourself. Talk to a lot of matches. A lot will flake or vanish. Good photos and thoughtful bio prompts. Reward those who put in effort. To be honest, a lot of it's timing and the numbers game, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we've heard this many times over. The amount of coping that men will do to justify the system is really pathetic. Here she goes. Don't give up. My fiance could have given up a long time ago, but thankfully he didn't, and now we're planning our wedding together. Thankfully he didn't. You didn't have to do any work. Thankfully, he didn't. It could have just been any number of those other guys that you clicked with eventually. Maybe your person hasn't joined yet. Just because you've been on a bunch of dates in the app, well, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. You just haven't found the right person for you yet. This is like the Jeremy Meeks video, keep hustling, keep grinding, keep chasing your dreams. You can do anything if you just put your mind to it. Exactly. Now, why do I think this is so fascinating? It's the message that's being sent to these normie men. And this is an excellent Reddit, by the way, for research, because you see these guys rate my profile. And why am I not getting matches? These dudes are completely oblivious to the black pill reality that we're living in. And it's kind of sad. Now, what they want you to do is just sit there, essentially, running on simping, or what would be the alternative? This is my quest to follow this land well, no matter how hopeless, no matter my fails. That's what they want you to believe. And I'll do another video on how I think they're trying to change male psychology and actually get people to question their sexuality by how much disgusting stuff they put in their face, or the pretty stuff that is inaccessible. But we'll have to talk about that at another time. So, how is this relevant? I had it happen recently. So one was in person through work, not a coworker though. This chick was like, oh, my friend's single. She's been cheated on twice, but she's a great girl. I'm like, oh, this is a terrible beginning, but I might let it live a little bit. So I said, you got to be, kind of sensitive because, yeah, she's been cucked before. You can see it in her eyes. All right. I get the girl's number. Bear in mind, they made the approach on me. I said hello to them, but I didn't really, make much effort. And as it turned out, we were going to go out and it fell through because of some scheduling thing, but I said still to keep the momentum going. I'm like, let's chat on the phone this evening because I really hadn't talked to her much. I mainly spoke to her friend who I found more attractive, but it is what it is. And she, oh, I'm not available. Well, a normal person says maybe tomorrow at this time, maybe that day, whatever, but she would never suggest it. I always had to present something. And then eventually she just starts like freezing me out. I'm going, you can't wait a little bit to actually organize a proper date or just talk. And actually, last week, I matched with this Hojabi on Hinge, of all places. She initially was pretty good. We had a nice back and forth. She was like an Eastern Mediterranean, a GNC, so more white passing. But she's not doing the long pauses between responses. And I was like, all right, this could be a possibility. Again, I'm like, let's chat on the phone because I want to make sure this is not a person when you go out to meet them, they're going to be buried in their phone. It's going to be like a dead water conversation. I'm wasting my time and money. Well, she's like, maybe. And then she just freezes me out again. I'm going, yeah, she probably started talking to someone better looking or maybe someone who was more responsive to her needs at the time. The point being that you say it shows you the fickle nature of women. If you can't hold out a little while to see something flourish, that's why you're probably not going to. And even if you do get married, it's going to be like, oh, well, my husband's at work and the personal trainer's always talking to me and texting me. I guess he cares about me more. Like, it really makes you wonder. I mean, this seems, you say, oh, it's too paranoid, but look at what's going on nowadays. Whenever these guys come and they're like trying to flex on black pillars by saying that they're married, I always mock them because it's like, what does that even mean? That you had to sign a contract to be with a woman, but if you know the nature of women, a lot of them, they're not content with their husband. So you basically set yourself up to be screwed over. Why is that a victory? I don't see it that way at any rate. But this brings us to a real problem because I think many of you guys are ultimately searching for a 9 to 5 beta male provider relationship. Not that you're going to put in those terms, but you want that. There's a lot of a sense of being incomplete. This is why you have so many MGTOWs that will do every measure possible to prove they don't need a woman. The dull, oh, I just don't need that, oh, whatever, castrate themselves. And yet they're still talking about women all the time because they crave this at some level. Maybe not under the current laws, but they still want that. The PUAs usually, once they've grifted enough money, they settle down with a homely girl that they can give the money to. What else are you going to do in life? And obviously you got the trad cons. So what are you aspiring to? It's something such as this. Hi, honey, I'm home.
Oh, hey, there's some leftover Velveeta and burnt sausage ends on the table along with Kool-Aid.
Oh, that's my favorite. I'm so in love. How about you, Sport? How was your day?
I don't know, Dad. I think I might be twins.
That's excellent. And what about my little princess? Princess. I'm coming in.
Oh my God, Dad, that was supposed to be a solo video, not stepdaughter, stepdad.
So this shows you where we are, right? And I get it, so I'm not mocking anyone, but I believe that perhaps those of us who are, let's say, a little bit more red-pilled and black-pilled, not just some LARP, but actually understand what's going on, might need to be more creative. I mean, even you see now in the internet.com a lot of this talk about, oh, because of the degeneracy of today, you got to look back to Germany in the 20s and the 30s and what they did. And truthfully, if you read what they were saying, it's like a mirror image to the crap that we come across in the modern age, just without all the technology. That being said, even they were not immune to it. Horst Wessel was trying to turn a Prazi into a housewife. You had Chinsel Himmler that married a woman who was like almost 10 years older. And I think she'd been married before. Now, eventually he took up with his secretary when he got status, but it just makes you understand that a lot of guys, they don't have these options of the perfect trad wife. Magda Goebbels, who was supposed to be the unofficial first lady of Germany, was a classic example of a monkey brancher. She had the romantic Care Bear boyfriend, then she jumped to a rich industrialist, had a kid with him so she could secure that money supply. She moves on to Goebbels because he has a lot of celebrity and media connections, has some kids with him, and then she starts sleeping with a chauffeur, and she wanted to bang Mustache Man as well. So these guys, if they had focused their whole life around having this perfect trad wife and the family, and that's all that mattered, they would not have accomplished things politically and become so well known in history. Whether you like the outcome or not is irrelevant to me. It's like Napoleon. Napoleon was expanding his empire into Egypt, and Josephine cucked him. Now, if he had built his entire life around this one woman, he would never have become Napoleon, because you marry her, and then if she cheats on you, you become all manic depressive, and you go live in a crappy studio apartment eating processed food. It's a miserable existence. There's no way to completely dismiss that possibility. And this is one criticism I did have of Lux Maximus, because he tried to say, oh yeah, they were all gynocentric when it came to Germany. That's not true. They may not have been okay with pay-for-play in Berlin, but in the East, no problem at all, because they understood you got these young men who could die any day, and you're going to try to virtue signal about how they have to be these good little prim boys when they're going into the great unknown. It reminds me of when you had those Iranian kids with the plastic keys around their neck making suicide runs on the Iraqi line. Most of them have probably never gotten laid. Oh, but don't worry, in heaven it'll happen, young man. That's just a piece of advice Goldberg has. If there's a good possibility that you're going to get your head blown off, first get your rocks off. Just a suggestion. I know I'm a horrible human being. Anyway, so it just gives you some more context, and that leads me to these more creative measures. Now, again, people are going to roast me. They're going to have a lot of derision, but you understand, we're only here because of how screwed up the world is. This is not something we've chosen. It's just, this is how crazy things have become, and so you have to react in a rational way. Or I guess you could just try to, forget about all that, block it out, and I'll just do what everyone else is doing, and you'll probably come down crashing. So what I considered is this: you find a nice Criollo, or maybe even European, fully European, because there are some like Germans and Russians, Mennonite or trad Catholic girl in Mexico. You marry her in the church. Don't bother with the state. Have a couple kids, but make sure that they're your own and don't have any kids beyond that. Move her to some safe commune south of El Paso. You're going to have to make sure the kids are either properly homeschooled or going to a good private academy, not crappy Mexican public schools. And you might stay in the West because you make good money there in the United States, or maybe you were traveling for your job, whatever it might be. You support them, but it's not going to be the same thing as living in the United States. And you maintain a certain degree of leverage in that relationship, which otherwise you're not going to have, because these guys go, oh, you can use game on your wife. You think Rolly Tomaso uses game on his wife? This is the game that he does. Oh, yeah, you can do your performative masculinity online, and I'll take the check from the rational male, the royalties. That's what's going on. Guys have this illusion. They don't realize women are like hyperactively evolved to understand emotional intelligence, soft power, persuasion. Those are different tactics. Men don't know. So usually when you think you're maintaining frame, she's just gradually moving the Overton window to where she's getting what she wants. They will play the long game. That's why they can lie, but they actually don't feel like they're lying. It's just an evolutionary strategy to protect themselves. They can remember what you've done wrong to them, but they can block out anything that they've done wrong, which is why they can blame you for all their behavior. It's brilliance. You have to actually appreciate the nature of women. You can't just mock them and deride them, because usually those are the guys that end up getting destroyed because if they're in any sort of serious relationship. But yeah, so you do that, and obviously people are going to go, oh yeah, but you'll get cucked by mestizo chat. That's always a possibility. The difference is you're not in the United States, where the legal system is going to majorly screw you over. In fact, there was a case, I think this was under was it the Bulger or Berger court? Either way, it was plant-based. But in Florida, I want to say, this woman was whoring around, so her husband divorced her, and then she decides to take up with some degenerate where she's going to be with a kid. So he sues to say, I don't want my kids living with this guy, to take away custody. And the law of the land said there's no evidence she's unfit to be a mother. This is what you get. Even, that was a more liberal court, but even more conservative states and judiciaries are no different. It was Oklahoma or Kansas had the law until a couple of years ago that if you were with a woman and she had a kid with someone else, you could still be required to pay child support. So, I mean, it just is absolutely mind-blowing. So I would rather be in a country where maybe better favors men, but at any rate, if you have resources, justice is a little bit different if you have resources. Same thing in the United States, just far more expensive for the average guy. The other argument, of course, is going to be, but you're supposed to be a father. And look, I'm not dismissing that entirely. But you think about it, they will claim, oh, an absent father means that your daughter becomes a degenerate. That's not necessarily true. Think of how many suburbanite, bald cell, Kleenex Swiffer dads, unconditional love, 24/7, always supporting the family, and yet the daughter rebels against that and does stuff to spite the parents and dishonor them. There's no guarantee. That doesn't give you any, because you're around all the time. And even if you're trying to have a strong front, again, remember the laws of the United States. You have practically none. You have no power as a man. So it is something to keep in mind. And regardless, you could still do that where you have them come up to El Paso once or twice a month. You meet with them and you've got FaceTime, you've got phones, right? It's not like we're living in the frickin' dark ages. Think of a lot of the European explorers. You think these conquistadors, some of them had wives back home. They went to the New World. Maybe some of them got cucked. All right, you take up with some nice, indigenous ass. The thing is that you have to start saying, to some extent, it's self-preservation. To some extent, it's just like, what do you want your life to be? Do you want to be at the beck and call all the time? Do you want to be essentially a cucked husband cowering in your house? Because I know a lot of guys, they're supposedly happily married, but if you see them around their wives, you know that they're basically deferring always to the woman. And I don't have any intention to do that. So the other dynamic as far as distances are concerned, you look at a lot of immigrants, they do this as a matter of necessity. I know a family, they haven't seen two of their kids for like 5-6 years because of visa issues. In college, there was a girl that basically, her parents were in one country, they sent the kids to another country to do entrance exams, and then they went to university in the West. So that also can be a matter of practicality. It isn't ideal, but again, look at the world we're dealing with. Unless you're just going to get married and go off in the boongies where you're basically, your neighbors are the freaking squirrels and the jackalopes and the ligers, you might have to be a little bit more creative. And I don't see this. I see these guys like, some dude was commenting, this Spurg, like, oh yeah, I've got a trad relationship. I got an LTR. We read the Bible together every day. I was like, yeah. And it's funny how pious you claim to be, and you're always insulting and attacking everyone anytime you make a comment, right? That's where you can see the major cope. So I just say that's one possibility. I'm not, definitively going to follow it, but I think, again, if you're really black-pilled and red-pilled, you're not just trying to fade into the blue once more. You might have to start thinking practically if you want to reproduce, but you don't want to completely sacrifice your own ability to live, honestly, because it is ultimately about time preference. Do you have an adequate amount to where you can have a family, but also accomplish your objectives, or are you just going to have to give up one or the other? So let me know what your perspective is. Are you guys really wanting the 9 to 5, or you've just kind of sworn it off because of the clown world around us?